On this video, I talk about heartbreak, loneliness, and attachment trauma. I'm Alan Robarge, an attachment-focused psychotherapist and a relationship educator, and I like to talk about how to heal attachment injuries and improve our relationships. And on this video, it's going to be all over the place, and I apologize for that because it's going to hone in on and spiral down into a bunch of layers, trying to capture the essence and the experience of loneliness, specifically how it is interwoven with our attachment wounds. And when there is heartbreak, when a relationship ends and we move into grief, we enter and access this loneliness that can remind us of this history of many relationships where the theme of loneliness is present, or maybe even perhaps your history in childhood with your family. And beyond loneliness as a word or concept, to try to tap into the hollow chest, the echo, the void in your body that can also sometimes feel poisonous. I call it I like the phrase, I just cannot be in my skin. It's a one-way street. It's a dead-end street to this realm in our mind of non-connection. It's very hard to see or have skill or to have a possibility of how to reverse and move out of this expansive place where all you see is nothing and more nothing and no connection, no other. So loneliness has different definitions and different types. And we say, well, the absence of social connection, the absence of meaningful relationships, not a feeling of engagement. And we can move back and forth between the external experience of loneliness, of not having friends or not feeling a sense of belonging to a place. And so we can focus. It's as if we're outwardly focused and we're saying, no, I'm not connected to this place. Or we're outwardly focused and we say, no, there's not another person there, a partner, romantic relationship. And it doesn't have to be that. Could be friend, could be family. But for many of us, the absence of a romantic relationship in our life then opens us up to the expansive, the cavernous emptiness of no one is there. Nothing is there. Relationship, we know we're in relationship through mirroring of other. I see you, I hear you. Immediately be able to, the other picks up on something that we said, or the expression on our face, or how we feel. Either we just blurted out how we feel, or they can tell, they see. There's a I see you, I can see you're concerned, I can see that you're upset, I can see that you're sad, I see that you enjoy me. And we hear, if we're with someone who has this skill to narrate the present moment, we're in a way, what mirroring, it can be physical, can be, if a person crosses their arms and they're angry, and then I, either consciously or just sort of happens, I cross my arms, and if they furrow their brow in a kind of confused concern, and then I mirror that back. There's this communication going on saying, yeah, I see you, I get you, you're concerned, you're surprised, you don't know what to do here. Incredible sense of comfort. It syncs up with our nervous system. It activates our attachment system. It really feels like nourishment. It really feels like we get plugged in to, we're plugged in, there's this electricity, the life force that's activated when we're able to show up for each other. And we just might be with people who don't know how to do that, and maybe sometimes we don't know how to do it either. And when there's potential possibility that we're going to be able to have more of that in our life, and I'm talking about these early relationships, these dating, you just met, it's a couple months in, it's a couple weeks in, and there's this fresh possibility, there's this promise. And even the promise, the anticipation through the promise, activates this electricity, and we're able to internalize the promise, and now we're in relationship with the promise, even though the other person is or isn't there, and even though the other person might not actually be giving that much back. But what we're getting is we're getting off on the promise. This isn't a choice. This is how the mind and the attachment system works. Our ability to internalize, it's called the love object. We internalize the love object, which is very, very helpful for continuity of relationship, because you can't be with a partner 24/7. And when you're separated, and if you're separated and you feel fear, you can rely on the warmth and the internalized object, the introject that you have created. By it becomes a fixed object, a fixed projection. The person's not actually here, the person's not actually inside your chest. But when we allow ourselves to be open and connected, and there is the beginning process of a relationship, and our attachment system is firing, and their attachment system is firing, and we very quickly begin to experience this internalized sense that they are here, we are together, we are now a we. And this can happen very quickly. The challenge of this happening very quickly is that we rely on it as being meaningful and meaning something, and we rely on it as thinking that it's going to stay. And for those of us who don't have this very often and haven't had this very often, we savor this experience, and it lights us up with a kind of joy. And there is an awareness, there is a comparison of its absence, of we know dry spells, dry periods of not getting it. We know dry spells, and when we're not dating, we know from family relationships and or childhood not having that regular there's a word that I want here. It's a regular dose, this regular dose of nourishment, of emotional connection. Now, I am talking in context of dating because this really applies to the whole duration of any kind of relationship, be it short-term, be it long-term. But I reference the dating experience because to highlight how this can happen very, very quickly. And it's very important that this internalized sense of other, that the relationship is now sitting here in us as this introject, or the idea of the other person is here. And the reason why I want to point out that it can happen very quickly is that's a function of the attachment system and mind. It doesn't mean that this relationship is meaningful. And it doesn't mean that this relationship is reliable. And it doesn't mean that this relationship is a gift from the heavens. And it doesn't mean that this relationship is supposed to be or meant to be, etc., etc. All it means is that we are hardwired in the attachment system and psychologically to create these internalized placeholders for those we care about. And this is what gets us through the day. And this is what helps us feel a sense of belonging and connection. And it's where we pick up, it's where we pick up from, or pick up next, of where we left off the last time we were physically or literally with the other person. Now, for those of us with some attachment injuries, attachment wounds, and attachment trauma, the challenge of the function of this internalizing the other person, internalizing the relationship, is that we have a tendency to assign much more meaning to it than looking at it in a way face value of what its function is. And we have a history and a tendency and an ability to make this the relationship, that this is the relationship. And so therefore we can tolerate the other person is not engaging, the other person is not curious, the other person is not investing, the other person is not showing up in a regular form of reliable, consistent, frequent nourishment with emotional responsiveness and emotional curiosity and behaviors that are congruent with the previous behaviors that are congruent with the frequency of the system that has been established of how often we come together and we pull back and take a break, and we come together and there's a closeness, and then we pull back and we live our lives and we're not seeing each other, and then we come back together. And there's a rhythm. Sometimes the rhythm changes randomly and quickly, and there's rather large stretches now where we're not actually interacting or connecting, or we're not creating new attachment interactions. And for us with attachment wounds now, we're relying on the internalized other, the internalized relationship, this placeholder to sustain and to fill in the gaps of the fact that the other person's really not here, or we ourselves are not showing up, or by right of life circumstance, we are apart. And so we start having more relationship with our own internalized object, our own this result of the previous interaction with the real person in real time becomes our reference point. Not the external interaction, but the internal one. And we might find that we are interacting more with this internalized sense, this internalized other. And this is what we call a fantasy relationship. And I'm so sorry if that sounds harsh, and I'm so sorry if that's absolute. It doesn't have to be. We can have both. Yes, it's a real person. Yes, it's a real relationship. Yes, there are moments of connection that happen in real time and grow, and seeds that are planted. But also, sometimes we have to step back and say, that I'm really manufacturing this. I don't know I'm manufacturing it, but I'm manufacturing it internally. Our relationships happen more within our head, within ourselves, than they actually do interacting with another person. We will have 800 thoughts, 800 questions, 800, I don't know why I picked the number 800, but it's a number I like. But we will imagine the person more than they actually see us or visit us or with us or mirror us. And so we can simulate attunement, we can simulate connection just by right of imagining that we are connected to them. Now, wow, that's scary. It's really scary for those of us who have a really great high tolerance for going without, for being in relationship with absence, and that we're actually living in this expansive realm of nothing is happening. There is no other. There is no warmth. There is no getting to know you. There is no initiating connection. But you keep saying, no, but it's here. They're here because this is here. It's real. There has to be something. And of course they're a real person. This is so outrageously painful to talk about because there's a great, great sadness that we don't do this by choice. It's not like we're setting up to do this, but the nature of the attachment system and our susceptibility to being in non-relationship. Most of us, maybe your attachment wounds and injuries don't come from family, but most of us, there's some the word familiar of family. Through the lens or the eyes of the child, there's a need to use the function of this internalized other, the internalized parent. And this helps sustain if in fact the parent's unavailable for whatever reason. And it runs an incredible range. It could be abuse, it could be neglect, it could be emotional cluelessness. It could also be the parent is distracted and not available because they're in relationship with an addiction, or they have their own mental health challenges which are pulling them away from the ability to relate, or they themselves are living with a unhealed, unintegrated attachment wound, and therefore also don't quite know how to relate to you because they themselves were not afforded the experience of relating. And so we know these patterns repeat. We know these patterns are generational. We know that there's a repetition that occurs. And for some of us, we are just so exhausted. We're so exhausted, like, again, it's happening again. And what do I mean? What's happening is this all crumbles and falls apart. As for most of what I'm going to say is, apply it to yourself. I don't know if it's true, but some of us, we just lose our tolerance to sustain this. And so the relationships that crash and burn happen more quickly. And the house of cards that are built on the projection based upon this internalized, almost idealized sense of a relationship, that house of cards also easily crumbles and falls away. And where in the past we might have been able to keep this going, also like the image of spinning plates, it activates an urgency. There's an urgency, and a primal panic is this feeling in your body, this anxiety, this activation that's a vibration. And for some of us, it's in our chest. And when your attachment needs are not getting met, you get this kind of this piercing. Now, sometimes it's like I'm so sorry to say this. Sometimes it's like a knife. Sometimes it's like a steak. Sometimes it's like a chopstick. Maybe it's also like a pencil. And there's a pricking. There's sometimes it's a light pricking. It's this just this low level. I'm anxious. I'm not getting attachment needs met. I'm not connecting. We're not connecting. And your worry and your panic, activates. And when we have this internalized sense of other, we have the ability to calm the primal panic attachment wound that's vibrating in our chest and poking us and making our diaphragm vibrate. And sometimes it feels like poison going through your bloodstream. But if you have again and again and again been here, sometimes, for some of us, it all seems to fall apart much more quickly. Oh, this again. This again. When a relationship ends, we have grief. We now have the buzzing, the everyday, universal grief of the immediacy of the relationship that's just ended. And it can feel like that too is a vibration. For me personally, it's not the same as this intense, piercing, fluttering kind of anxiety. It's almost external, this grief. It's like electricity. It too has it's just a different quality. So sometimes for me, I describe it as I feel shell-shocked, like where this other one is like an internalized vibration coming out of my chest, like a wound that is pulsing. The everyday grief, when it really takes hold, and for me this is more the immediacy of a loss, like the most intense part of loss in the first so many weeks, so many months. For some of us, this lasts a long time. We just keep looping here. It can feel like you're shell-shocked, so it's like my head is kind of being bounced around. And it can feel muffled, and it feels like I'm in a tunnel. So I refer to this, I call this like the grief tunnel. And that seems to happen kind of universally. Like people who don't have attachment injuries, people who don't have attachment wounds, people who don't have the symptoms of attachment trauma, which fall into three main categories: hyperarousal, intrusion, and constriction, which tangent segue is a big part of the component of the course that I created called the 4 attachment distress responses. The 4 responses being poking, running, hiding, and submitting. And for those of us who don't have attachment injuries, attachment wounds, attachment trauma that show up as symptoms of hyperarousal, intrusion, and constriction, we can still get this. We're in a tunnel. There's a grief. That grief has like this echo quality. It's echoing around us. However, if you do have attachment injuries, attachment wounds, and attachment trauma, that then simultaneously this external provocation, this external shaking, also lines up with the piercing anxiety. For some of us, it's literally our heartbeat. For some of us, like a speedy heartbeat. But the first time it happened to me, I can remember I was at a yoga retreat, and it was a series of these experiences, and I call them splitting open, breaking open, my heart breaking open. And it had already happened before, but this particular time was a significant crushing, the great crushing. And my heart exploded. The wound exploded. And I was just trying to function and to go to work and to get dinner and to be able, I describe this also, not being able to be in your skin. Not able to be in my skin. There's this feeling like you want to jump out of your skin. And just so you know, it's this place, this experience where many people reach for, they activate their addiction to manage this. They seek self-medication through substances, through alcohol, through drugs, other any other kind of process addiction like gambling, process addiction like shopping, process addiction like workaholism. And generically, we can say all addiction is a longing for connection. And I was at this yoga retreat, and I couldn't stay. I mean, I could not be in my skin. So I kept going to the yoga retreat, and then I would leave, and I lived nearby. So I'd walk home, and I would just try to function. And there's a lot of crying going on between, these moments. It's just waves of grief and waves of sadness. And I remember I had a twin bed. It's a small bed, but I had this really great, this great headboard with these really nice wooden spindles. Because I can remember sometimes I would feel like I'm losing my mind, and I wasn't able to be present in my skin, and that crushing feeling. And I would sit on the floor and I would hold one of these spindles, almost like it was a staff. And I would hold on to it, sort of like holding on for life. It grounded me. I could not feel grounded in my own body, in my own experience, in my own mind. So I'd hang on to the bed. And I remember I had a hardwood floor. The spindle I'm holding on to, the bed frame I'm holding on to is wood, and the floor is wood. And I remember it's cold. Happened to be in Chicago. This seemed to happen a lot, so it's not like I can place it as a particular, like in this moment I can remember times when it was hot, and then I can also remember times when it was cold. This day it was summer. The yoga retreat was summer, and I remember laying on the bed, and I might cry in this moment because I can connect to the despair of it so much. And this happened years ago, and this is not a fresh wound, and I've known this for years. But I can access that place of despair. And I knew nothing about attachment trauma. It would only be years later that I learned any of the language. And I first learned about trauma through my work with sexual assault and rape victims through sexual assault centers. And it was my education of understanding trauma in that context, and then being introduced to attachment period, attachment theory, attachment behaviors, and our attachment system, and then linking the two of the trauma education and the attachment education, and saying, like, these are the same thing. These same trauma symptoms are showing up when our relationship needs are not getting met, or we have some history, some longevity, some prolonged period of a disconnect, an obstacle. You're being denied connection, denied emotional presence, denied, for some, love. It feels, not being loved. And as you can imagine, as a human being, if you're a child or whatever age, as an adult, this fuels a panic. And many of us feel it in our body as a visceral, physical panic, this vibration. And I was in Chicago, and I'm on the bed, and I looked down, and you know that film Alien? It's, I don't know, younger people might not know this, but there's a film Alien, and there's the alien starts. This is sort of like a not very attractive image, so I'm sorry if you don't like this or if it's scary or ugly. But here we go. Imagine, the scary teeth of the alien, like the alien's face starts like pushing through your chest. Very, very scary. So I didn't have an alien in me, unless we consider attachment trauma an alien. But my diaphragm, literally this thing, it sort of looked like a... It looked like a, I don't know why I just thought of this, but it's like the size of lipstick. It's like imagine a box, a lipstick box. So it's like, I just remember it just sort of looked rectangular and long, or at least from my view, my vantage point. And there was this thing, and I just call it my diaphragm, literally protruding out of my chest and vibrating. It wasn't so much scary in that moment as it was, what the hell? Like it was like, it sort of like threw a wrench in the cog. It threw a wrench in the pain and in the grief and the suffering. It just like really like slapped me into present moment reality, a kind of neutral observing. And I'm observing this thing pulsing out of my body. Oh, this is my fear of not being chosen in relationship. This is my fear of abandonment. This is my fear of I don't matter. And when those beliefs, those core beliefs, activate in the physical vibration of the loss and the heartbreak, the urgency, I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone, those core beliefs bring in a wave of shame, crushing shame, horrible, horrible shame. I'm not good enough. I am nobody. I don't exist. I don't matter. I'm not chosen. And remember earlier I talked about this realm, this place of loneliness, this expanse void of vast nothingness where no one is there. The shame beliefs and the realness of the shame being alive lives in that space. Of the great absence, the attachment injuries, the attachment trauma lives in this place of absence. We know absence, we know non-connection, we know here but not here. Your parent is here but they're not here. Hello? Hello? Yoo-hoo! Are you here? Do you know the film for older people? I keep saying I'm old. I feel young, which I think everybody does to a certain extent. You can't believe at some point you go, I'm really this old? So anyway, my generation, and I don't know if people who are slightly different generation know, but the film, when I was growing up, the film The Breakfast Club, and there's Ali Sheedy's character. And there's a point in the film, let's say 2/3 in, where everyone is revealing their own relationship struggle and how they're being received and perceived and treated in their families. And they all come together, they're at detention, and they all come together and they're able to find the common grounds within completely different scenarios. And in a way, these characters, and this is the point of the film, but that in a way we are all these characters. They are aspects of self. We can see ourselves in all of the characters, or we might primarily pick one. And the Ali Sheedy character, her struggle is around her parents don't see her. She's invisible. I actually even think she uses that word. She's invisible. To just not be recognized, to not be known. So this place of loneliness, when it's not externally focused, it's not about, oh, you don't have social connection, or you don't belong to the right number of clubs. You're not seeking out friends. Kind of external network to manage external loneliness, which is perfect and helpful and necessary, needed. But there's also a different kind of loneliness that exists within this space of great, vast emptiness and absence, and there's a void. And it's there that the shame lives. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. Nobody loves you. Nobody loves you. One of the greatest skills and tools to work with shame is simply the counter belief, the counter message, to challenge and say, this is not real. This is not true. And I know many people then say, oh, it is true because I feel it. I feel that I'm nobody. I feel I'm nothing. And maybe that's a different video to explore. But shame exists a lot via smoke and mirrors. When you really go to grab it and try to pin it down, it's all of a sudden kind of like ethereal. It's like sand in your hand. It just, it's not there. It's an apparition. It's the ghost of the relationship we never had with those we wanted to have that relationship with those we loved or love. So in a body sense, this loneliness then brings a hollowness. Like, not only do we feel hollow, and for me it's a hollowness in my chest, and you might feel hollow in your solar plexus and in your stomach. Some people report a kind of weightlessness, like you just can't stand your ground. You just can't feel your feet on the ground. Maybe also a floating, like you're groundless. And this hollowness, for me, is both visually conceptual as a kind of place in my mind. The hollowness is like the byproduct of this great expanse where relationship does not live. And our wound, the wound is you want relationship. Your wound, the most important thing ever is relationship. The most important thing ever is the reliability and security of someone else showing up, and that it's not an apparition. There's a weight. The word presence. Everything I'm talking about is based on absence. Our wound exists in the absence. And so when we meet a person who's flesh and blood, a real person, and we can feel them, and it literally immediately has a presence to it because they're in front of you. And when you internalize, when you create this love introject, and it will literally feel warm in your body, and it puts a lilt in your step, and you feel a fullness. That too creates a presence. But then that's dangerous because relying on that presence, that in and of itself is just the internalized object, that's the introject, and it's just a function of mind. There's no permanence or guarantee. So when there's heartbreak, when a relationship ends, when there's grief, all the conditions are right to thrust us into this world of loneliness. And it's in that experience where we are then bombarded with the memory and the immediacy of you're alone. You're alone. You are alone here. And there's two sources of this loneliness and how it makes you feel alone. One source is the memory and the history of real people who are not there for you, the history of the attachment wound and the attachment trauma. And then the other source, that's personal. That's like this personal history. But the other source is the existential, meaning it's impersonal. It's nothing to do with you. Like, this is the human condition, that we all grapple with this incredible sense of aloneness, and that you really are alone. So you're trying to manage the intensity of a wound that's personal based upon history that tells you you're not good enough, you're not loved, and you're now in this place where you're confronting this apparition of shame, and you feel hollow, and your diaphragm is vibrating out of your chest. And simultaneously, it's linking up with, it's syncing up with, well, this is also a real reality, a valid experience, a human experience by right of being human, and that in certain ways, fundamentally, you are all that you have. Not always, not all the time, because we have these brief, bright moments of connection and communication and relationship. But you know those moments. You know what it's like to be in a crowd of people, even with friends, and something comes over you, and the whole moment feels so surreal, like your friends are nobodies, and you're nobody. And you might feel that feeling of tunnel vision, or if you're at a place where there's loud music, everything just gets muffled, and you're alone in the crowd. There's that feeling. Or what we've already talked about, the hollowness that comes in the realm of loneliness. Like, there's no one here to keep me company. There is no one here to love me. In this place, I'm not talking about life like total absolute statement. I'm just saying when you enter this state of mind, this realm, which for many of us, the gateway is through trauma. The gateway is through attachment trauma. And then there we are. We're in this world, this hollow nothing. And what keeps coming back is just, I am really alone here. And if you have a history of visiting this place, or you have a history of spending a lot of your mind space in here, and if you have a lot of history where life circumstance forces you into this realm, we begin to believe it as true and absolute. And also, it's so easy to nurture a great wish, the wish of the lover, the wish of the relationship, the wish of the beloved. Say, it'd be so nice just to have someone else to sit here with. One of my favorite definitions of relationship is now we're alone together. Now, this is problematic, and this is probably topic for another video, but some of us only perceive relationship as being able to move to this very dark, expansive, lonely place and think that, we want someone to love us there. And that's very problematic, because then we're trying to get someone to love us through the wound, or have their wound join our wound, and then we're still within the construct of the wound. Like, what kind of relationship is that? I really love you. I really love your wound. And please love my wound. I know a lot of this is conceptual and might or might not make sense. This is my interpretation of trying to manage when your chest is vibrating and you feel like your heart is melting and you can't be in your skin. And there seems to be like a giant hammer hitting you on the head. and you can't sleep. And then you move into the beliefs, the core beliefs of your non-existence and unimportance, the shame. Everything that I'm talking about is interconnected. It's woven together. And the grief and the loss and the heartbreak reactivates the wound, the attachment wound, which then throws us into the loneliness, which throws us into this origin of absence, which is both a personal absence and a universal absence. The echo of hollowness in existence, in our being, in our body. This realizing that everything's empty. Even your great love just falls apart. Even your beloved, even the other person, even this relationship just disappears and disintegrates. But you still feel it. It's still here. It's this. It's this. And you keep pointing, can we save this? And it's already over. This whole idea, let it go. The relationship already let you go. You don't have to let anything go. That ship has already sailed. The train has already left the station. You're standing in a train station, an empty train station. There are no people. It's empty. It's quiet. And you keep telling yourself you're supposed to let go of the relationship, or let go of the train. There's no train. The relationship has already let you go. One more thing about the shame here. The shame is then perceived that the other person is rejecting us. And if you have an abandonment wound, it's that you're not chosen. The channeled, seen through the lens of shame, of not being chosen, it's complete, utter, absolute torture. And it feels like non-existence. I so much don't want to be in relationship with you. You are now a prisoner of not being loved. You are a prisoner of not being chosen. You are a prisoner of being denied connection. Remember how I said shame actually is not true? These are assumed beliefs, a lot of smoke and mirrors. Abandonment wound, man, I know I could get a lot of pushback on this one, so, get ready for this. It's abandonment wound also in a great sense is an illusion. And then we get upset. No, I was abandoned. This happened, and then this happened, and this person walked out, and in my family and emotional neglect. No, I was abandoned. Yes. The details happened. The details exist. We all have within us this place of the ability, the psychology, the potential to be left. And it's not linked to your worth or your identity or your core essence. And that to be left is not an abandonment of your personhood. And then simply the person wasn't leaving you, they were just leaving. But for those of us with some history of an abandonment wound, to be left is you're leaving my core essence, you're leaving my worth, you're leaving everything about me that possibly could ever be loved. And if you are not entering a relationship with me and I'm not loved, then I don't exist. So the abandonment is not only they are abandoning us, they are abandoning me. The self-abandonment that happens, I'm no longer even connected to my own existence. That's how utterly non-important I am. When the other does not show up. When the other does not want to be with me. I think for this video, we're coming to a close ever so here to capture what is all of this going on in our life. I find it challenging that sometimes in the past when I've made videos at this point of the video, and or if I happen to end the video, there seems to be a group of people who say, yes, but how? How? We've been working with this for 57 minutes. The how is in the knowing and experiencing intimately the layers, the interconnections of this pain, of this suffering, and to accessing it with a curiosity to know this suffering, not to get rid of it, not to avoid it, not to push it away, but to really be able to understand it and to be with it and to strengthen this observer self who sees it as a construct, who sees it as a apparition, as not believable. And that each time we go through this, unfortunately, the repetition, each time we go through it, we become stronger and stronger to see it as a kind of silly movie that we just keep playing. The how is not get rid of it. The how is enter it, be it, and actually learn to love it. That you love your pain. You love yourself through your pain. And for me in this moment, it's empathy and compassion. I see myself laying on that bed in Chicago, and my diaphragm is jumping out of my chest. And in this moment, I go, oh, I love him. I love him. He was really hurting. Really hurting. He had no idea what was happening. And he was alone. For the very first time, being thrust into very heightened microscope, the spotlight illuminating the hurt. So the how is not follow these 5 steps. The how is not do the work. The how is not get over it. The how is enter the intimacy of your suffering. And this is what I call work with your mind. And what I've just said is completely non-sexy and non-attractive, and many people go, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Why would you do that? I just want to get over it, feel better, and I want to be in a relationship. And many people, when they are even confronted with some of this, that's the approach they take, and they say, they really get out there and they just start dating. They start looking for the next person. And it's really trying to beat this. No, I'm not going to feel this. I'm not going to be intimate with this. I'm not going to explore what this means for me. I'm not going to work with my mind. I just need to start dating. Where's my Tinder? Let's get on Tinder. Let's get the dating apps going. And let's just keep hunting and find someone to love us. And maybe that'll work for a few people. Most of us, it doesn't work. And then we come right back to this place. And then it all starts all over again, and we say, how did this happen again? This whole process, this whole experience is a practice of compassion. To love yourself while being able to see clearly your suffering. And it is, in some weird, bizarre sense, and for me this is not very comforting, but it's through our network of suffering that we are connected to each other, and that I know you and you know me, and we're not different at all. We're both bleeding. Our chests are vibrating, maybe at different times, but we know it. We know. We know attachment trauma. We know not being chosen. We know shame. We know absence. So the invitation to work with your mind is perhaps take some of the language and the exploration of how I have created in my own mind a kind of scaffolding and a way to maneuver through these different states. And they're the same but different. They have different qualities. And maybe some of my language does resonate, but also find your own language. This might just serve as a comparison, because your experience could be totally different. So with that, blessings to you, blessings to me, all of us. You're doing the best you can, and relationships are not easy. And when they fail, this is what happens. And it becomes then ridiculous for someone else or we to ourselves to say, oh, just get over it. Just move on. This video is part of a series, the Work With Your Mind series. I also am creating a Heartbreak series and a dating series, all these series, and they pretty much are interwoven. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is more videos are on the way. And for the sake of this video and this channel and watching these videos, please do the things, and you know what I'm talking about. That means click like, leave a comment, subscribe to this channel, and pretty much you already know that there's this algorithm thing that favors content creators or favors channels if you get more views and you have people who create buzz about it. And I am putting an effort and energy and sincerity to share this information, so please help me out and share it with others, share the link with others, leave the comments, etc., etc. Also look in the description for links. I think I mentioned a course earlier, you could find that there. And just other ways to stay in touch for more content, more videos, more about loneliness, more about heartbreak, and more about attachment trauma. Thank you.